Welcome to the Wellness Chronicles. This is Aaron Wells, Executive Director of North Philly Project, and I'm here to flow with you. And I'll be right back after this moment. Thank you for hanging out. I'm back. My new thing is to make sure I've got my tea, um, and as always, tea time for me. I'm so happy that you're hanging out with us tonight. I appreciate it. This is North Philly Project's offering to the community every Monday at 7 o'clock. It's the Wellness Chronicles. And these are conversations, community conversations, exploring life in marginalized communities and having discussions about how to ignite social change, but not just change for the sake of change, but sustainable change, to watch the community prosper, to watch the residents, the families, the men and women, the youth, the children of the community, um, to grab hold of the best that life has to offer and to watch our community grow and to prosper and to experience the wellness that we all not only desire in life, but deserve. And so these conversations um, bring out issues and discuss issues, many on the forefront, but also some of the underlying issues that are not readily discussed, but should be discussed. And when discussed, help create the solutions for a community. So here we are. Um, Hopefully, my guests will come and hang out with me. It's a do drop in, right? Our Wellness Chronicles, for the people that come and uh, join panel discussion and conversation with me. My folks come in, they pop in, we chat, and so we're very comfortable and chilling that way. I want to say hello to my good brother Greg Harris. Greg is joining us again this week. I say hello and salutations of peace, love to you, good brother. Thanks for joining. I hope the conversation um, is something that will drive you to participate. Just jump in. Please make sure that you are sharing these conversations on your social media platforms, and also go to the North Philly Project YouTube channel and subscribe, please. I'm trying to get us to 10,000 subscribers. Some people think that's a an aggressive objective. I'm Aaron Wells. That's how I get down, right? I'm going for it. My community deserves to have the exposure of conversations that will lead to wellness in our community. All right. So here we are, the Wellness Chronicles, conversations exploring life in marginalized communities, and connected to that, right? The bridge, how to ignite, propel, um, set ablaze, right? How to begin to move forward into the sustainable social change for our wellness and yeah, yeah, for our wellness and our healing as a community. So we've been talking about the last couple of weeks. I've just been sharing with everyone. Been talking about the why behind the what. Our community needs surgery, and it goes beyond what you see in the news, and it's connected to what you live every day, what you hear, what you see, what you experience every day. But what about the lives of those people that you see on the bus, walking down the street, on the highway, your neighbors? What about those people? Everybody's going through something. Everybody's dealing with how community is evolving and shaping. Everybody's dealing with all of the issues in their own way. So we deal with them corporately, we deal with them individually, but it's our community. And if community is going to dwell in an aura, a sense of an atmosphere of wellness, then it is my belief that all of the historical and traditional band-aids that we continually place on issues and problems, we got to stop putting band-aids on broken legs. We have to stop putting band-aids on broken limbs, and we have to do some surgery. We have to allow our community to heal in a healthy way, And the only way to do that is to truly address the issues that either cause the unwellness in our community, um, and also address those issues in such a way that we bring solutions to the table. So we want to always use this platform, the Wellness Chronicles, to discuss the why behind the what. You look at the news and all they talk about is the what. They give you the what. Here's what's happening. This is what happened today. Here's what it looks like. Well, why? Why is this happening? Why are these things happening? And so these are the conversations that we want to be able to have here on Wellness Chronicles. I'm going to bring my guest on in just a second. Just setting the platform, setting the stage, getting the temperature of the water. Family, we got to get our rhythm back. Yeah, we got to get our rhythm back. We're a rhythmic people. And there's a rhythm to wellness. There's a rhythm to health. There's a rhythm to blessing. There's a rhythm to sustained wellness. And we have lost our rhythm. And so we have to get our rhythm back. And I believe in order to do that there are 10 critical issues that our community must address if we are going to get our rhythm back. Somebody to talk with us tonight and hang out with us is a partner in community, a brother that I call a friend, and a voice that I think needs to be heard in the conversation. My brother Pastor Clarence Hester of Erie Avenue Baptist Church is going to join us and speak with us about tonight's topic. Pastor Hester, if you would, just introduce yourself to everybody, give us a brief bio, and then we'll sort of dig in the conversation.
Well, thank you, Brother Wells, and it's definitely a pleasure to be on here with one of God's kings, one of his heralders that's trying to point us in the right direction. I am the pastor of the Erie Avenue Baptist Church, where I have had the privilege to pastor. October will be 29 years. I wear a number of hats. First and foremost, even before becoming a pastor and a minister, I was an activist, and I have continued to be an activist, striving to promote um, healthy communities and enhance the quality of life within our communities. I also serve as the chaplain for the East Division um, Police Department. I am the president of the 25th District Police Chaplain Program. I have served for 33 years as the chaplain. And I also am the chairperson for the 37th Ward CTC Coalition. That's Communities That Care Coalition, an entity that has been put together to try to mitigate youth violence and give young people tools to put into their toolkit so that they might be successful and move in a more positive light. Uh, Again, I wear so many hats. I'm a facilitator, a motivator, organizer, and so I'm just grateful to have this opportunity to share with you, Dr. Wells, and just hopefully I can say something that will help the plight that we find ourselves in.
Pastor Hester, I really appreciate your time. I appreciate you hanging out with me. We serve on a community collaborative board, a collection of nonprofits and just concerned people who choose to see, and not just see, but to put energy and action into sustainable change in North Philadelphia. And so it's just an honor to have you on. So I'm ready to have some great conversation with you. Also, there's a possibility, Brother Keith Quick, families unresolved murders will be on with us also. But so here we are, Pastor. We've been talking about over the last few weeks how we have to get our rhythm back, and we've talked about there's just these crucial issues, many issues, right? There's a big elephant that is our issues in community. But there are 10 that I believe have to be addressed if we're going to begin to truly build the sustained wellness for a community. And so our first week we talked about poverty. And for
Mhm,
me, that's the game changer. For me,
mhm,
poverty is
mhm,
the issue. It is the issue, and that most of the social ills that we experience come out of generational poverty. And then the second last week we talked about gentrification.
mhm,
The issue is, and the question would be, is this something that's happening or something that's happening to us? And so just wanted to
mhm,
be able to look at definition, look at what's actually happened when we consider gentrification and how that plays a role in developing and building wellness in community, the Black community. And so today we sort of morph into another connector of these issues. And issue three for us tonight, Pastor, is the role of the faith
mhm,
community in
mhm,
rebuilding the
mhm,
Black community. Um, the reality of it is, I think it's something like 110 churches in Philadelphia. Um, our Black churches are a staple of community and have been. But when we talk about the redefining of community, the question then becomes to me, is the faith community, and not just churches, specifically for us churches tonight, but we're talking about our brothers and sisters in Islam. We're talking about others who are a part of the larger faith community, the relevancy of the faith community. Um, I want to be able to discuss that, the role of the faith community. I want to be able to discuss that and be able for us to talk about what this looks like for us. So
mhm.
um, we're going to dig into a few things, Pastor, and I'm gonna turn it over and just hear from you. Last night in conversation with you, we talked about these spokes, um,
Mhm,
and there are many. There are
mhm,
many. Faith community is only one of the spokes on the wheel called
mhm,
community, but we talk about the social determinants of our communities. And I just want to say for all who's listening, those things that we deal with in Philadelphia, we deal with all over the country in all of our communities that look like us, that move like us. And so, as we're talking about solutions in Philly, we're actually talking about solutions in other places. So, I'm going to bring Brother Keith on. Brother Keith, are you there with us?
Yes, I am. Good afternoon, my brothers, and good
All
evening
right,
wherever
brother.
you are.
And good evening, my brother.
Good evening, man. We're just launching, and on with us is your former teammate,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Miss Hester. And so
Yes,
I
sir.
think
Let's
we
go quick.
lost for a minute, but he's back on. So here we go. We're talking about these determinants, and so with these determinants, just for our audience, health, the functioning of community, and the quality of life outcomes and risk. What does that look like? And there are some key determinants, social health determinants that speak to community. And when these things are out of balance, when they're out of whack, when they're not attended to, when there's no emphasis on it, throws the wellness of community not only out of balance, but it creates unwellness. And so, from the eyes of the faith community, we wanted to address some of these tonight. So, Pastor, we're going to dig in. And what I would like to do is start here with you and Brother Keith, if he's on. Um, One of the domains of the social health determinants is the economic stability of a community. Pastor, from your viewpoint, and you've been pastoring for many years, but you've been embedded in community longer. This is not just what you do; it's who you are.
Mhm.
As we look at the role of our faith community, how does the faith community have have a arm in this? Do they have a dog in this fight as far as the economic stability of community?
I believe it begins and ends with the faith community because we have a responsibility. And you and I spoke about it a little bit last evening, where when we look back in the days of yesteryear, um, the church was the anchor of the community. That everything stemmed from the community. Economic stability stemmed from community. Social awareness stem from the community. I mean, from the church. Um, and whether it was crises or whether it was just building and developing, it all stemmed from the church. When celebrations stemmed from the faith-based community, where the church celebrated the community and they celebrated with the community, and the community knew the faith-based community. Right now, that's not the case. We recognize that the time that we're living in right now doesn't have to remain the way it is. But where we at right now is like in yesteryear, churches that most churches, the people lived in the community, and they were churches that gathered, that went to those churches. They came from the community. As people became a little successful and started moving into different neighborhoods and moving out of the neighborhood, people started commuting to the church. And as so, what we consider it now is that most churches are commuting churches, and so there's no vested interest in that community. And so, for the most part, many people in the community don't know nothing about the church. They don't even know who the pastor is in some of the churches. And that's where we have to kind of move the needle. We have to move the needle by getting outside the four walls. Me when we talked about those, we talked about we talked. I talked about my will theory. My analogy of the wheel and the community being the sprocket and the spokes that stem from the sprocket. Many times when we look at community, we just talk about residents. We don't even talk about the faith base. We don't talk about the the block captains and the block reps. We don't talk about the schools. We don't talk about the institutions of higher learning. We don't talk about our political leaders. We don't talk about law enforcement officers and firefighters. We don't talk about the social service providers. We don't talk about the different municipalities, the city, the state, and the federal governments that have offices within our community and representation within our community. We don't talk about community-based organizations, as well as financial institutions and business incorporations, recreation centers. I'm naming a lot of spokes. Libraries. Looking at sports organizations. That represent our city. Looking at the cultural organizations in our communities and in our city, because we have a very diverse city, and sometimes we kind of get off track. We say community and all we think about is residents. I wanted to look at each one of those entities as a spoke. And if one of those spokes is out of bounds, all of us have rode bikes as children, some of us rode them as adults. If one spoke is out of bounds, that wheel don't turn right. And we're liable to fall. And that's what we've been doing. We've been falling because the church have a responsibility to reach out to them other spokes and identify resources and services, and then go into the community and listen to what the community needs are, and then to utilize the resources from those varied spokes to help build up and develop that community into a working organism, where the life is, the quality of life is enhanced. The well-being of people, families are made whole, um, provisions are extended, and so that's kind of where we need to look at. And when we look at all the violence that has, I'm kind of getting off track, as you said, the economic stability. I'll get ready to go to another place.
We'll get there. Go ahead. We're good.
But
We'll get there.
but just looking at, how do we work with our politicians to do job fairs and career fairs? We don't just need a job, we need a career fairs. How do we look at identifying resources to get young people, people, even adults that they might not have been to college, but they have a skill set, they have a passion. How do we help them become self entrepreneurs? And sometimes we look in the church, and I say in the church there are so many resources, especially churches that have a lot of people. Unfortunately, what the church have moved from healing people and looking at how to sustain themselves.
Hmm.
You
And
know,
that's
we
that's part of that economic issue, right? That
mhm,
even the church itself needs to have to include in this process of serving community. How do we keep our doors open in order
Mhm.
to do that. And then when we have, for instance, the this climate of gentrification,
Mhm. Mhm.
we have people now who are in community that have replaced people who used to be in the community, and there's no
Mhm.
connection to these
That's right.
organizations, so they also struggle. I'm flowing with you, Pastor. I want to bring Keith on just a minute, but we're going to
Mhm.
come back
Mhm.
and dig in. Keith, you want to jump on what Pastor Hester was sharing?
Yeah, and thank you for having me on.
Excuse me, and
Pastor,
happy birthday, brother.
well, thank
Oh,
you
happy,
very much. Thank
happy
you.
birthday, quick.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Um, Pastor started out in his initial statement. He said something that was very important and key. He said, if you look back, a lot of things were happening that aren't happening now. And one of those things, if you look back, is we had economic stability.
Mhm.
Now, today, we live in an economy that's unstable. So we don't have any economic stability. Um, the world, in fact, is in or has been in the last 2.5, almost 3 years, what they call a global reset. And with that global reset, it has caused economic instability worldwide.
Mhm.
And because the United States is one of the richest and most powerful countries in the world, this economic stability has hit the United States very hard. So, with us living in a major city, one of the largest cities in the country, it has had a profound effect on this particular city, like other large cities, Chicago, New York, Philadelphia, Dallas. And that economic instability has also affected the church. Okay, now when we talk about faith and we talk about religion, we have to understand what that really is. Religion is an organization of spirituality into something that became the hand of the nation of conquerors. So when we were brought here um, almost 400 years ago, we were put in an economic position where we had nothing. So here we are today, 400 years later, and yes, we've made some strides, but we're still economically unstable. Now, Pastor said another thing. He talked about the church, and the church has become selfish because
Mhm.
the church is in survival mode also, especially the smaller churches, and in some cases, some of the larger churches, again, because they were shut down during the economic reset or the global reset. So it's about root little pig or die. Now, what do I mean by that? I got mine, you got to get yours. The church hasn't been able to function in the last 2.5 years as a body like it did, as we say, when you look back. So it has affected not only the church, but it also has affected the community because it has had a destabilizing effect on the community. Adding to that, the transition in the church, because in the Christian community, a lot of the Christians went in the last 10 years went to Islam. So you in that pool between who's going to go to church and who's not going to go to church, you also have instability. So when you have instability, you're going to have chaos, and that's where I see us at today as a community, especially in the African American community. So I'm going to yield there.
I
And
just
I
want
just,
to, before I bring Pastor, real quickly before I bring you on, Pastor, and just to continue conversation, I want to say hello to my forever friend Donna Earl. She's on from DC by way of Chester, Pennsylvania, but Donna and I went to college together, so Donna's on. Brother Greg is on. Pastor Brother Greg says, I think male leadership and male attendance is lacking in the Black church. This has made impact on the health of our community. So I just wanted to keep us connected to the chat. Pastor Hester, continuing thoughts on this conversation about the economic stability.
I think it preceded the pandemic. I think we can put some weight in what Quick says is definitely true, but that was also true prior to the pandemic. Because again, the church was moving in a silo. It's moving in its own silo. I'm gonna just give you an example. You look at our communities, and you know, our heart, all of our hearts is North Philly. And so when I consider North Philly, and I look at where I live, I look at all the devastation. When I look at the businesses, we don't own the businesses. Again, the church is behind their four walls; they're not outside. I think that when I look from Lehigh Avenue to Glenwood Avenue, that's 4 blocks. Well, actually, it's 3 blocks. From from right down Germantown Avenue. I'm going right down Germantown Avenue. There's 30 churches of different denominations. Given like a third of them are Baptist churches, but they're different denominations. And there's only a couple that are sowing back into the community. And so even when we have churches, some churches that are full, our church is a small church. We you know, I think we're surviving because we have that connection with the community, because we believe in doing programs where we can invite seniors in and they can learn about senior services. Because we invite the 25th district. We were facilitators for the 25th district, public service area meeting. And so we try to meet the church's need and bring in L&I and other entities to come in to kind of deal with some of the quality of life issues. But there's a lot of churches that are just not doing that, that wasn't doing that prior to the pandemic. And so as far as the community is concerned, as the residents of the community, there's no loss for them as it relates to the church. And so there's no need for them to even consider going to church because they realize that the church, and for the most part, they only concerned about themselves. When I look at from 9th Street to 13th Street on Lehigh Avenue, we have almost 10. There's 10 more churches, and just the 12th in Lehigh. Quick, there's the 12th in Lehigh. There's 5 churches
Mm-hmm.
right there on that one corner. And yet that is one of the most, a block away is one of the most volatile areas in there. We do have some economic stability up on Broad Street, but again, that is not economic stability from a residential standpoint. It's not economic then from a faith-based standpoint, because the faith bases don't own those businesses. The community don't own those businesses. These are people from other diverse backgrounds. Most of them don't even live in the community. That come into the community. Again, I'll go back to what I said earlier. The churches, commuting churches, all they worried about is being able to get in the door. They got a problem with residents parking in front of the church. And so there's no demonstration of love. There's no demonstration of compassion. There's no demonstration of concern. And it's much like, and the residents, like the church, have become very apathetic and complacent. That's just a hardcore reality. The only way we can move from that and get people to look at the church from a different perspective, a perspective of being beneficial to that neighborhood that it resides in. It is for the church to come outside the walls, to do some of the things I just talked about, and to make themselves available and accessible to the community. As pastors, come outside and what we do, we come and listen to, people walking by, just ask them questions, stop them, let them know you're there for them, and then, if they give you a problem, get their information, try to meet that problem, try to resolve that problem for them. That's how people start, right now there's so much mistrust with the church. Not just about, I'm a Southern Baptist. We just went through a whole thing with molestation and all kind of sexual harassment. And so yeah, the church got a black eye right now.
I
And
want to
so
stay. I want to stay with. I'm gonna jump in a little bit, Pastor
mhm,
and Brother Keith. I want to stay with the economic piece for a
mhm,
while with this because it actually is when you peel back this onion.
mhm,
There's a lot there. There's
mhm,
a lot there concerning the Black community and the faith community, its faith community component. The Pew, say it again, Aaron, the Pew Charitable Trust um, state of the city, and I've been sharing this for as long as people will allow me to do it and they will listen. both in 2018 and 2022, and subsequently 19 through 21, has stated that out of the top 10 cities in the United States, that Philadelphia is the poorest, and that our North Philly zip codes, excuse me, and right across the park, West Philly zip codes, those are the poorest zip codes of the poorest of the top 10 cities in the country, which is Philadelphia. Now, with that said, if there is no money coming back into community, and you mentioned on that, what was it, 12th and Lehigh, 9th and Lehigh, five
That's right.
churches, something like 12, and you go through our corridors of our neighborhoods in North Philadelphia, specifically for me, Philadelphia in general, um, most of that money that goes in tithes, offerings, they don't come. That doesn't come back into community.
It doesn't come back in the community.
Number one, we don't bank at black banks. That's the first thing. So the money that is circulated generally comes through fundraising events, and it is not from the main source of the giving of members of churches in our community. So that money does not come back. One, for me. Number two, since the demographics, and that's not just the Pew Charitable Trust, Children's Hospital of Philadelphia does a community assessment. The poverty is the number one issue in our community. Philadelphia Public Works does an assessment. Actually, it's sitting right there. Poverty is number one and the driver for us. And so when we don't realize and understand that, we're also talking about, let me go back. We have this whole push with gentrification and the change of atmosphere, the change of climate with that. And so now monies that may have come back into community through church now are leaving communities because people are being relocated and have to find somewhere to stay. That means that their money goes with them. And so when we talk about faith, community, and finance, when we talk about faith, community, and economy, we talk about faith, community, and money is just not as simple as giving, connected to those other systems that you talked about, Pastor, those other community spokes of the wheel, right? That they're so interconnected, and we lose sight of the fact that our entities of worship, our churches, our mosques, there are economic pictures that go outside of just the attendance of members. As we talk about this issue of economy, how can we shift and be able to see more of an economic insert from our faith community, more of an economic conversation from our community? Pastor Hester, you and I was talking about if not too long ago, Zion Baptist Church, when Leon Sullivan, and just some of the things that we saw, nostalgic era, right? How do we now include faith communities into the economic conversation and help understand and get the message across how important they are to the economic picture of our community?
Well, I think, and you spoke about Zion. You know, I've had the privilege of being mentored by one of my mentors was Dr. Gus Roman when he was pastor at Zion, and he was part of a coalition. And there are several entities throughout the city that are fulfilling the same purpose. We have what we call the Clergy Council of Housing. And so it's how did the church look at the economic development that's taking place in the community and collaborate with the developers when they come in and make sure that the community benefits from the new developments. You know, one of the things that, you know, outside of that we spoke at, and this is outside the church realm, but we also definitely spoke of it when we talked about the clergy house and the support group. And that is, even when development comes in, there's a lot of developers coming in North Philly right now. And we have to learn how to, and the church can be a catalyst for this. A church can be a catalyst for this. That's why I'm saying this. We have to learn how to get the developers to add a line item. A lot of times we the age old thing about activists asking for more jobs. We want a certain amount of jobs, We know how that process works. We know that when we ask for jobs, and I told people to stop asking for jobs and writing percentages. Actually, when I became a consultant for Shriners Hospital, one of the things that we tried to incorporate was that, I got to look at the zip codes of the people that was being hired. And so it was no more like, well, you can hire from the community. We're going to hire 15 people from the community. 2 weeks later, they don't work out. And so we brought our own people in. No, if you guarantee us 25 jobs, if you let go of somebody from the 19133 or 19140 or 19132, you have to hire somebody back within that. The church and the community have to do a better job of preparing people, even in our community that's a part of unions, to be able to access these jobs. The other thing is when we look at the makeup, you're bringing in, you put these pretty buildings up. Well, why not put a line item? And again, the church can be a catalyst for making this happen. They could be an advocate for the community. That if you're doing it, let's look at 5 to 10 residents in that block or the surrounding blocks that development taking place. They might need some um, their houses painted. They might need some plumbing work inside their house. They might need some electrical work inside their house. They might have some things to help stabilize their home structure. They don't have the dollars to get the repairs done, and that can be written into that again. And it's like empowering. Empowering the people in the community to have some say so and to have some benefit that comes. I don't know if that makes a lot of sense to some folk, but to me, it makes a whole lot of sense. Just to be able to sow and not just come in, y'all making them dollars again going back outside the community. This is a way of making sure the dollars are put back into the community. From the church perspective, working with banks, looking at community programs and seeing how we can help some families, looking at the charitable institutions, even our health systems institutions, and how we can make sure that they get the access to the proper medical care. Even if they, even if they don't have, if they don't fit the guidelines, if they don't have the proper insurance, how can we make sure that they're healthy and well? Um,
Hey,
I'm,
Brother Keith,
I'm
jump in
saying a
for a
lot
minute.
here.
Yeah, that's okay. Brother Keith, jump in. What does it look like for us to see the faith community really get involved from an economic standpoint in community?
One of the things we have to take into consideration is we're in the 21st century. Okay. We cannot continue to use 20th century strategies in the
Mm-hmm.
21st century.
Mm-hmm.
So, first and foremost, I would say the church, it should be incumbent upon the church. And I'm not going to say the church, I'm going to say the religious institutions, okay,
Faith-based community. Yeah.
to actually show us what those new strategies are, okay, because it says in Habakkuk 2:2, it's talking about having a plan, okay, and it says write it down.
Mm-hmm.
Other folks certainly had a plan to get where they are today. We have not had a plan. Now, again, for us to get where we are, the church is supposedly the leader in our community.
Mm-hmm.
That is not the case anymore, okay, because people have
Mm-hmm.
abandoned, if you will, for lack
Mm-hmm.
of a better word, the church. Our people, which are the same people that was in bondage in Israel, okay, are leaderless. So we need some leaders to put a plan together, a strategy, if you will, for us to follow. When you talk about economics, Dr. Karenga talks about collective responsibility and us get, like Dr. You just mentioned his name, Dr. Sullivan. Dr. Sullivan gave us a plan, and his particular congregation, along with the community, followed that plan. And look what they did. Okay, so we can move mountains, but I think to rebuild, and that's what we're talking about, rebuild,
Mm-hmm.
we have to have a plan, and we have to stick to that plan. Okay, and I think that will lead us on a path to get where we need to get, because we're definitely in a rebuilding mode at this particular point. All of our resources go out of the community, like you said, but we are partially to blame for that.
That's
We
right.
can't
That's
blame
right.
the church. We
That's right.
can't blame mom and dad, because mom and dad, and I can only talk about my generation,
Mhm.
they had a plan, and that plan helped um, Pastor and
Build
your
us.
brother Wells get to
Mhm.
where we are today.
That's
But
right.
we can sit in our living room and take advantage of this technology. Another thing, we cannot let technology pass by. It took me, I don't know, 17, 18 minutes, maybe 20, 25 to get on here. But I could have said, you know what, man, nix this. I'm not. But we got to get out of that that quit mode.
Mhm.
A lot of us have quit. Not only quit the church, but we quit on ourselves. So we have to have more fortitude moving into the 21st century, because the 22nd century is right around the corner. And if we don't start building and rebuilding now, we will be lost. We will be like the children of Israel. We'll be wandering in the desert, because you see how fast things are moving and things are happening. So that's my little 2 cents. Uh, I'm not a pastor, so I can't talk as long as a pastor. But that's my little 2 cents there.
I want to jump in with both feet and thank both of you. I want to grab the chat real quick and put our participants out there. Um, Greg Harris jumped in with you, Pastor Hester, and just was stating the excellent points that you made, points and ideas. Um, everyone's in agreement that we're in rebuilding mode. Our friend Ted Houston is on,
Mhm.
good brother and community partner. Ted asked the question, gentlemen, how do we get the church to be a place worthy of receiving grant funds that will directly benefit the community? And he says, may begin with listening to and loving the community outside of their doors. And I think, Brother Keith, this what Ted is, excuse me, his question and comment goes so much to what you're saying about the church not seeing itself as a 20th century church, but a 21st century church, and being able to compete, being able to compete for and to get involved. You know, with the lottery, the old commercial says you got to play to win. And so the faith community in and of itself, without changing morals, without changing virtues, without changing its characteristics, but also be wise as a serpent and be able to get to um, into the progression and the evolution of life in such a way that the church becomes, and I keep saying church, but I really want to emphasize the faith community becomes relevant, that people look to faith communities again as a beacon of light. If I can get support from somewhere else, wisdom from somewhere else, connectivity for somewhere else, why would I look over there? And so if there has to be a re-identification, I believe, of faith entities. It doesn't, we see that in some pockets. There are some progressive ministries, programs that are out there, and they're leading the way in communities, and their voices out there. But I saw, and I'm gonna turn this over to you real quickly, Pastor Hester. I was looking at a Facebook page for black clergy in Philly today, and
Mhm.
um, I'm a critic of the church, and I'm a licensed ordained minister of the gospel, walk in the office of pastor. But I'm extremely critical of who the church is and can be in black community. And one of those things that I saw was just such a norm. There was a collection of clergy at a podium talking about somebody needs to do something about gun violence. Pastor Hester, I come with you. Get away from the podium and get your tail on those streets and have conversations with the citizens of the community. Stop standing in front of the podiums and the marches and the TV cameras. It's getting us nowhere. But if we don't get out in community and interact and become interwoven in, not only will the gospel message be missing, the best of who we are is missing. Pastor has to jump in so I can be quiet.
Well, two things. One, let me first try to address Ted's question. When we talk about churches going after grant funding, The best way to do that is not so much, you also want to look at, and I think we lose this even with community-based organizations. We get so entrenched in trying to identify grant funding, which eventually will run out, as a looking at self-sustaining funding.
Mm-hmm.
And so again, we have to learn how to build the people up so that they can develop their own businesses, within the community, and they be able to sow into the church and the church back into the community. It's a twofold process. But you can in the interim, you can look at doing some grant, seeking out some grants, but you should be doing them in collaborations with the community-based organizations, other entities in the community, where you're working with the church is working directly with. And so we don't have to secure the money, but we can be a part of the secure of the money. One of the things that and quick, when I first started this years ago, they told me I was a babe and I didn't know what I was talking about, and I talked about networking and
Mm-hmm.
collaborating, and they told me that would never happen. Everybody has their own agenda, and they said I was a babe and I didn't understand what was going on. This is in the early '80s, so I didn't know what I was talking about. And I said part of the problem in our communities, in the churches, I have to say, being a part of larger, some churches are part of larger organizations, and there's a fight for a slice of pie. We have to get away from fighting for a slice of pie. We have to learn how to come together and say we need a whole pie, and then let us divvy our pie up. Churches can come together and collaborate and go after some funding, and they can do some things jointly and collectively, to the benefit of the community. I think that's extremely important. One of the things that, and I'm with you, sometimes people say, look, you're a pastor, and you're very critical of the church, because I think we missed the mark. Like Quick said earlier, the days of yesterday are done. I did a whole lot of protesting, but after the protesting, we put a plan together and we try to put, we wanted something to come out of the protest. We had so many protests that at some point we got to recognize protesting is to get an eye on the issue. Everybody know the issue now. We should be strategizing, planning, and implementing, and developing and sustaining
Mm-hmm.
the resolvement of the issues now. That's just my personal. That's Hester's opinion. And so I have a problem with pastors because they don't want to. What they want to do is they want to do prayer walks, and they want to go and pray on corners. Well, we took it a step further. And quick notice, because this is what I did in the 25th district. A couple of districts adopted it. Captain Bachmeyer, there was a homicide. He wanted us to go knock on doors and get information anonymously from people because we were the church and they might listen to. I didn't feel comfortable doing that. I said, Captain, this is what I want to do. I want to pray on it. I'll come back with a solution. So what I came back with is what we call a quality of life package. I know Quick, he's seen some of these packages. And
Mm-hmm.
what we did was we put a packages of services together. And so we went to communities. Yes, we prayed when we got to intercessions, but as we walked through them blocks, we talked with them individuals. We listened to them. We listened to what their needs was. We gave them some information. If they wasn't outside, we put the information in their doors and we let them know, yes, we're walking with the police in unison. And we want to know that we are here together collectively to serve the community.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's where the church need to be getting to, identifying resources and sharing them with that community. That's what we try to do. That thing moved from a 6-page document to a 45-page document where we was rendering all type of resources to communities. Where 2-3 years people would come, do you got some updates? So you guys, and that's what we want to do because we want to learn how. And I think the church, it is incumbent, as Brother Quick said, on the church to empower the community. And I think that's what we have gotten away from. Our communities are such an enabling mode, and we need to really get back to an empowerment mode. So I
Mm-hmm.
hope I addressed both things.
I think you did, brother. Quick, jump in,
Okay.
brother. Quick, will the OIC model work today in 21st century church, 21st century community rather? Can an OIC model from the faith community work?
It certainly can. And when I say we, I'm not talking about the government. I'm talking about the community.
Mhm.
The community should be actively looking to implement plans and systems
That's right.
like OIC, like Reverend Sullivan had. Uh, that particular model is the model for the 21st century. Now, poverty has always been a major issue for us as a people. Poverty will always be a major issue for us as a people because now the brother asked in the chat about government money and government grants.
Mm-hmm.
When you receive government money, and Pastor Hester can assess, he knows about this.
Mm-hmm.
You have certain parameters you have to follow. Government money, faith-based initiative. They had it back in the day, as they say.
Mm-hmm.
When you take that money, you're taking government money. You have to heed what the government says and govern yourself accordingly. Faith-based initiative, FBI, means that. FBI.
Mm-hmm.
Now, most folks think the FBI is the Federal Bureau of Investigation.
Mm-hmm.
But you take that government money, you will be under investigation because they scrutinize how you spend that money.
That's right. That's right.
So my thing is, I think we should stay away from government money
Mm-hmm.
if we can, and we can if we use cooperative economics.
Mm-hmm.
We spend and we receive enough money to be self-sufficient. I believe in these days, if the money is spent properly and if we are taught how to take that money and impregnate that money, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
make that money grow, make the money make money. And we can do this. We are the most intelligent people on the planet. It's just having a plan and following that plan. So the initial question is, will OIC model work? We should be working on that. That's something we need to look into further, I believe.
We are getting ready to put the plane in the hangar for tonight. We have a few more minutes, but I want to stay with this. The economic piece for community becomes the driver. Again, we miss this, and this is why I talk about the why behind the what. The message is safety. The message is safety. If I can't use that, if I can't keep you in fear, then you'll ask questions. You'll ask questions like this: how come we can't afford where we live? You'll ask questions like, why won't they see my son at the hospital? You'll start asking questions that questions systems. And so in order for systems not to be questioned, we keep certain narratives in front of people. One is safety. Yeah, we need to address safety in our community. But when we stop as the only story, the only narrative, the only conversation, we miss things like this. The fact that economically we are broken. And economically, we are so far behind the eight ball, it seems like it's unretrievable. But that's just not true. It is retrievable. Mm-hmm. And systems, processes like OIC are made for community. They're made for us to be able to dig out. We've been given a tool way before our time, mm-hmm. and a tool before its time, actually. Mm-hmm. That's been made for us to be able to dig out. Now, I said all that to say this. I want to make sure that the conversations about economic stability stay in front of us as a people, mm-hmm. and stay in front of us as the entities of faith. We have to begin teaching beyond tithes and offerings. We got to help people start businesses. We have to teach beyond what keeps the doors of the church open and start talking about what propels us into financial wellness, what eradicates generational poverty and creates generational wealth. We have to be able to look at some of the models that are working in other people groups and be able to use those and apply those to ourselves, which means we have to unlearn some things to learn some things. But it is doable. Mm-hmm. It's doable because we see people utilizing different tools and processes every day for the benefit of both community and family. We have got to, Brother Keith, you're right, not just dig into the 21st century. We got to start looking at the 22nd century, and we have to be able to use what everybody else is seemingly grabbing hold of to prosper themselves. Again, the balance is without losing who we are as people of faith, as people of God, as lovers of God and people. We can't lose that. However, we can't keep working from behind the eight ball when there are, it has been presented to us these methodologies, not just to gain wealth, but to live the standard of life that we both desire and deserve. And again, with all that said, Pastor Hester, if you would, as we put the plane in the hangar, can you give us one or two quick, one or two just solutions of where we can start thinking toward and moving toward as a people of faith?
Well, I think that both you and Quick kind of hit the nail on the head. And I alluded to it earlier when we talked about collaborations, but I think when we talk about the church and you talked about the OIC model, I think that if churches were more apt to look at implementing entrepreneurial training programs. Again, you heard me talk about looking at people and that have a gift or people that have a passion and forming those gifts and passions into a successful business. That'll build the church up and it'll build the community up. I think it's a twofold process. I like you, Dr. Wells. I believe that safety and violence is a byproduct of our economic stability, or instability in in this case. And so I think that's this one step. Quick also hit on another thing that we have to write the plan down. And we like to say plan the work and then work the plan. But then we have to move past that because a lot of times what happens, both in the church and in community-based organizations, is that we get to our goal and then we just stop, we plateau, and we think we arrived, but we got to continue to forge forward, and we got to continue to push. And I seen what brother Greg Harris said in the chat, where churches are competitive, and I think I said that we are all part of some other organizations, and within the organization that make funding available. There's a competitive state about it, but then also, I think, and like I said, I'm part of the Southern Baptist, and they have different grants for different things, but guess what? In order to receive them grants, you have to sow into the convention. If you don't sow in, then you don't meet the criteria to receive the grants. And so we have to put the church in a place where even if you don't sow in, because we want to emulate, in my case, I am a Christian, so I'm going to say Christ. We realize that we are a very diverse community as it relates to faith-based community. There's a number of varied faith-based entities in our community. Our community is very diverse. But for us, we got to emulate Christ. We got to be demonstrators and bless people and serve the poor and serve the sick and meet the distressed. These are the things that we're called to do. And as a church, we have to find a way to make it happen and to be sustained in our ability to continue making it happen.
Thank you so much, Pastor. Brother Keith, putting the plane in the hangar, what are your last thoughts for tonight as far as in rebuilding Black community, how the faith community can address economic stability?
Well, I believe the faith community can do it just by that, by having faith, coming to the realization of what faith really means. Mm-hmm. Faith really means putting complete trust or confidence in something or someone. When we go back to the 20th century, the people at Zion Baptist on Broad Street, where Reverend Sullivan pastored, and I want to add this in before I get into that. Pastor Hester, I've seen him on the front line. A lot of these other pastors, I don't know them. I have never seen them on the front line. But what I was going to say is we have to get back to having the same type of faith that a guy like Reverend Sullivan, those people trusted him. That's why they were able to, they completely trusted him. Mm-hmm. That's why they were able to take their $5, their $10, their $15 and pool that. Okay. So we have to the church has to get to a point go back to a point where they have complete faith in the leader of the church. And that way, the guy at 12th in Cambria, 12th in Lehigh, if he has $1, he will have enough faith in the church to take that dollar and use it as seed money. So faith is the key to the whole everything. Faith.
Gentlemen, I appreciate your time tonight. As you put your plane in the hangar there, Brother Keith, I'm looking at this placard my daughter gave me that's over here to my right. It says, faith makes things possible, not easy. And so the reality of it is for us as people of faith that it's doable. But we got to, again, I go back to Pennsylvania lottery slogan, you got to play to win. And so we've got to be able to get out there and to begin to build. We're called to be builders, and then we can build the economic stability. But you're right, both of you, Kings, we do need a plan. We need strategy. We need to be able to utilize the tools that have been presented for us, all of the resources. And the reality, somebody's just got to start it. And when we see a model that works, it's okay to grab hold of that model and to be able to then shape it for whatever's intimate for us. This conversation gets to go on. Those of you who jumped on this week, I appreciate it. Make sure you're sharing these conversations on your social media platforms, and please go to the North Philly Project YouTube channel and subscribe. I really want to build 10,000 members, subscribers, and then I want to grow that out to another 10,000. Pastor Hester, thank you so much. We'll be talking very soon. I appreciate your time. I appreciate your wisdom. And we appreciate the work that you continually do for the families, the residents of the people of Philadelphia, and for me, always specifically North Philly. Brother Keith, I love you. I appreciate your time and your effort and the great things that you're doing. I hope both of you will come back on. These conversations definitely continue, and the community should be able to hear from people who are invested in community as the two of you are. So I thank you very much. Happy birthday again, brother.
Thank you,
Brother Keith. You're more than
thank
welcome.
you for having me on.
Oh, man.
Thank you for having us on. And we also want to commend you for the work that you're doing in keeping this dialogue alive. And so thank you.
Thank you very much. So everybody, we'll see you next week. Make sure you're sharing this. These are the Wellness Chronicles. I love it, right? And we're having conversations about our community. Our conversations are about sustainable change, and how do we create those solutions. And I'm a firm believer that the solutions are within us. All right. Have a great rest of your week. Make sure that you smile a lot. Make sure that you love somebody, and let that love start with the person you look at in the mirror in the morning. Be blessed. Take care.